Greetings again, folks. So I have to make also another video with regards to President Trump's tariffs to what I think is more than 100 nations. There's been a lot of varied responses with regards to this, and the probably the most consistent response, negative response that one would find is that a lot of people who are responding to this on TV, whether it's American networks, Canadian news networks, European news networks, and even in South Africa, are alleging that Donald Trump's numbers or the claims that he said that countries are levying on the United States are not factual. And then there've been some people in the news who are saying that what Donald Trump did was he took the deficit rate that the U.S. is suffering at every is suffering, and then divided it by two, and then he used that as the tariff rate that the U.S. is being charged by these nations. The problem with this idea is that, firstly, these people don't know what methodology that Donald Trump used. They don't know the methodology. They have not spoken to the Trump's economic team. They have not asked for the source data. They are just speculating. But this happens a lot, actually, when it comes to Donald Trump. The news media, they just get people to come and speculate in terms of, okay, this is what he's doing, this is how he arrived to this, without even interviewing the person in terms of finding out how did he arrive to these conclusions. And then also, this is easy to dispute because if you look at, for instance, at a country like the Kingdom of Lesotho, for instance, are you going to tell me that Lesotho has a trade surplus vis-a-vis the United States of America? This is why the US is charging them 50% tariffs. Do you guys really believe that? Do you believe that Lesotho is selling so much stuff to the US compared to what the US is selling to Lesotho, that Lesotho has a surplus vis-a-vis the US? Who believes that, guys? Does Lesotho even has a trade surplus compared with vis-a-vis South Africa? No, they do not. So that basis or methodology that they're saying that he's using that is found to be true, to be false, by just looking at one example. Because South Africa and Lesotho don't have trade surpluses vis-a-vis the United States. So it can't possibly be that he was using the United States deficit rate and then dividing it by two, because I can show you two nations who have been levied tariffs who do not have a trade surplus vis-a-vis the United States, which then would be a trade deficit on the side of the United States. So we know that they are lying. That's first and foremost. And then secondly, there hasn't been a single government official of any of these countries that have been levied tariffs who have come out and say, this tariff that the United States is alleging we are charging them, say 40%, 60%, 30%, 25%, is not true. This is the rate that we are charging them. Not a single country has come out and said that. I wonder why. I wonder why. But instead, you have these talking heads in the media saying that President Trump is lying, and we have the people who have the actual figures because they know how much they are charging the United States in terms of tariffs, not saying anything about how much they are charging the United States in terms of tariffs vis-a-vis what Trump claimed they are charging the United States in terms of tariffs. Why? Why? And all of them who are opposing these tariffs without fail, except the ones who have called the United States and are negotiating and some of them have reduced and completely eliminated their tariffs, are making vague and subjective statements about, the great benefits of free trade, about how we as the global community, we need to work together, the global this, global that, how trade wars are going to remake global trade, how global wars are not good for any of the parties involved, blah, 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 blah. But none of them have responded on the factual basis that Trump is saying we are charging them X, but we are charging them Y. Trump is saying we are doing A, but we are doing B. None of them have done so. So then how are you then having this this one narrative coming from American media, coming from Canadian media, coming from European media, saying these things when none of the people who actually have the numbers, like the EU, which everyone knows that the EU rips up everyone. The EU rips up everyone in the world. They are the worst aggressors, second only to China. Because the number one aggressor in the world when it comes to ripping off nations and trade is China. And we know now that this issue of free trade has been a myth from the very beginning, because what has made China such a big trade and manufacturing behemoth has not been their competitive advantage. No, it has been the fact that they are cheating on trade. And they've been cheating on trade for 50 years or longer. And Donald Trump, President Trump, God bless him, says it ends here, right now. And for me, it is absolutely astonishing that news anchors would sit there and listen to a commentator or analyst or someone say, yeah, this is how Trump arrived to these tariff rates, while they are glaring examples that a lot of these nations actually don't have a trade surplus vis-a-vis the US. And just because they don't have a trade surplus vis-a-vis the US does not mean they are not cheating on trade. Yep. And a lot of these nations have a trade deficit, even though they are still charging the US exorbitant rates and tariffs for the past 30 to 40 years, while the US was not charging them anything. And they still can't compete with the US. And then when you add all of these countries, how much has the US lost in the past 40 years because of countries cheating? Regardless of whether they are cheating and still losing. But how much more have the US lost? So, and Donald Trump is basically just doing what every president of every country should be doing for their own nations and saying, no, we will not be taken advantage of. We will not be taken advantage. Whether we are more powerful than you, we will not be taken advantage of. We are not chumps. We are not your losers to be used by you. And it ends here. Cool, guys. Comments below. Thank you.